What would you do if the only way to survive was to become something the world had never seen before? Not a hero, not a human, something far more dangerous and far more free. Our story begins not with a warrior, not with a chosen one, but with a bull. A bull standing in the mud of a farm pen, chewing dry hay, watching calves stumble around him. But behind those dark eyes lives a mind that remembers everything. A human soul reincarnated inside for hooves and a thick black hide. He has no name the world would recognize, only the one a little girl gave him. Little Black. And Little Black has a plan. From the moment he opened his eyes in this body, he understood one brutal truth about his new life. The bigger you grew on a farm, the faster you ended up on a butcher's block. The calves around him had learned that lesson early: stay small, stay invisible, stay alive. But Little Black had learned something none of them could see. Somewhere deep inside him, a system had awakened, the Devour Evolution system. Every bite he took didn't just fill his stomach, it made him stronger, more powerful, more dangerous. The plan was simple and ruthless in its clarity. Eat everything, grow to 3,000 pounds, trigger evolution, escape. So he ate dry straw, coarse soybean meal, anything they threw into the pen. He ate until he was the largest animal on the farm by a wide margin. The calves stared at him like he had gone completely mad. Maybe he had, or maybe he was the only one in that pen who truly understood what was at stake. But farm feed was slow fuel, deeply, frustratingly slow. After 2 months of non-stop eating, the system gave him a cold assessment. 800 pounds, constitution 15, strength 20, low energy food. Compared to every other animal in the pen, he was enormous. Compared to what he needed to be, he was nowhere near enough. Then the humans arrived and changed everything. Boss Lee walked into the farm with his daughter Duo clinging to his arm. She had red, puffy eyes and she kept darting nervous glances at Little Black every few seconds. Her voice came out small and desperate. "Daddy, please don't kill Little Black. He's such a good boy." Boss Lee's expression didn't move. He patted her on the head and told her calmly that he wasn't killing the bull. He was selling him. Right before New Year's, to the meat market. The hay in Little Black's mouth suddenly tasted like nothing at all. New Year's was still weeks away. That was time, and time was the only currency he had left. He pushed harder, eating faster, barely sleeping. But the numbers barely moved. And then Boss Lee came back with a group of men, took one look at how massive the bull had grown, and his eyes lit up with something far worse than pride. Greed. "Brothers," Boss Lee said, "help me load this big black bull onto the truck, and I'll treat everyone to a real feast tonight." Little Black fought with everything he had. They grabbed his horns and dragged him out anyway. Outside, a heavy iron cage truck sat waiting. The moment he saw it, every last shred of hope he'd been holding onto nearly crumbled. A regular truck he might have been able to tip, but a built-in iron cage, that was a different problem entirely. Then he noticed something. One small, glinting detail. The cage door wasn't locked. Just a single bolt holding it shut. That bolt was his last shot at survival. The truck roared to life and began grinding up a mountain road, the whole frame shaking and jolting. Little Black kept his eyes fixed on that bolt and waited. Boss Lee watched him in the rearview mirror every few seconds. No opening. Then the road curved sharply and Boss Lee had to focus on the wheel. Slow, steady, Little Black pressed his horn against the bolt and pushed. It was almost free when the brakes slammed down. A van was blocking the road ahead. Several lean, weary men climbed out. The one in front had a cigarette clamped between his teeth, and a long scar running the full length of his face. His name was Blade, and he had not come here by accident. Boss Lee and Blade spoke in low voices at the back of the truck, the negotiation cold and quick. Little Black lay flat on the cage floor and played dumb. Blade circled the cage, appraising him like livestock at auction. 800 pounds easy, Blade said, greed flickering openly in his eyes. The deal was struck before Little Black could do anything about it. Then Blade asked the question that changed everything. "How come the cage door isn't locked?" Boss Lee opened his mouth to answer. Little Black drove his full body weight into the bolt. Crack! It snapped clean. The cage door flew open and Little Black exploded out of the truck like a black thunderbolt. He hit the road at a dead sprint and crashed into the tree line before anyone could react. "Get him!" Blade roared behind him. "That beast is worth 30,000 bucks." Little Black ran harder, branches lashing across his hide. But 2 months on farm feed had left him with almost nothing in reserve. His legs were already starting to fail. Then, through the undergrowth, a smell hit him like a fist, heavy and sharp and wet with iron. Blood. He followed it and found a wild boar carcass in the brush, freshly dead, still warm. The system said eat to grow stronger. It never said anything about only eating hay. Footsteps crashing through the trees behind him. No time to think. He lowered his head, bit into the boar's flesh, and tore off a huge chunk. Raw blood flooded his mouth and he forced it down past the nausea. The system chimed like an alarm going off. Devoured wild boar flesh, 50 high energy points gained. Constitution +5. Strength +8. Weight increased by 100 pounds. One mouthful of meat had done more than an entire month of hay. He tore into that boar and ate like his life depended on it. Because it did. Heat surged through his muscles with every swallow, pressing hard against his skin. And behind him, Blade's voice was getting louder by the second. Over there, Blade shouted, and 3 men came crashing through the trees with hunting rifles raised. Bosley trailed behind, face pale as chalk. Blade took aim at the bull and Bosley grabbed his arm. Shoot it, and the meat's worthless. Blade shrugged him off. Who cares about the meat? That beast gets away and I'm out of 30,000. The rifle barrel swung up. Little Black clamped the half-eaten boar carcass in his jaws and bolted. A gunshot cracked the air. The bullet skimmed past his back leg and blasted into the dirt. He ran harder, deeper, the carcass swinging from his teeth. This wasn't food he was willing to drop for anything. About 10 minutes later, he shook them and ducked into a mountain cave. He dropped the boar and caught his breath. The system chimed again. Current weight 900 pounds, Constitution 32, Strength 45. Then it added something that made him look down at his own body. Detecting continuous consumption of high-energy flesh, body mutation has begun. A faint layer of black keratinous growth was spreading slowly across his skin. His forelegs were visibly thicker, muscle fibers pressing against the hide. He scraped a hoof across the stone floor and carved a groove with almost no effort. More than double his old strength, and he hadn't even finished eating. He finished the boar completely. Weight breaks 1,000 pounds, strength breaks 50, skin hardness increased by 30%. He felt unstoppable, every trace of exhaustion gone. Then barking erupted from outside the cave. Blade had brought hunting dogs. 3 massive hounds charged in from the entrance, fangs bared, snarling straight at him. The lead dog stood over 3 feet tall, its eyes blazing with savage hunger. Tear it apart, Blade's voice rang from outside. All 3 launched for his throat at once. This time, Little Black didn't run. He reared up and drove his hoof into the lead dog with everything he had. Boom! The dog flew through the air, slammed into the cave wall, and went still. The other 2 froze. Fear flickered across their eyes, but he was already charging. His horn drove through the second dog's gut. His hoof crushed the spine of the third. Silence returned to the cave, and then a wild idea lit up in his mind. If eating wild boar made him stronger, what about hunting dogs? He bit into the largest carcass. Devoured mutant hunting dog flesh, 80 high energy points gained. Strength +12, Constitution +10, Agility +5. The dog's energy value was higher than the boar's. He devoured all 3 without hesitation. Consumption complete. Current weight 1,200 pounds, Strength 78, Constitution 65, Agility 30. Host Constitution has reached the mutation threshold. Deep mutation initiating. Before the child faded, his skin erupted in scorching heat, like thousands of needles biting from the inside out. He writhed on the cave floor in agony, but bit down and stayed silent. 10 minutes passed. The burning faded. He struggled to his feet and looked down at himself. Every inch of his hide was now covered in a solid layer of black bony keratin plating, hard as iron to the touch, like wearing a full suit of armor. And jutting from his back, 7 or 8 razor-sharp bone spikes, each about 6 inches long, gleaming cold in the cave dark. His horns had thickened too, their tips sharp as twin blades. Then Blade's voice drifted in from outside, calm and cold. That beast killed 3 of my dogs today. It dies. A rustling sound, something being prepared. Every muscle in Little Black's body locked tight. A sparking object came flying through the cave entrance. Explosives. He spun and sprinted deep into the cave. Boom! A thunderous explosion rocked the mountain. Rock rained down like hail. The shockwave knocked him off his feet and sent stone fragments hammering into his back. He barely felt them. The bony plating had taken every hit. He scrambled upright. The cave entrance had half caved in. Is it dead? Blade called from outside. Has to be. That blast would have finished a bear. Boss Lee exhaled with relief. A cold gleam crossed Little Black's eyes. Dead. Not even close. He growled low in his chest, lowered his head, and drove straight into the collapsed entrance. Rock, mud, rubble, none of it stopped him. He smashed through and burst out into sunlight, squinting against the brightness. When his eyes adjusted, Blade and Boss Lee had gone completely white. What is that thing? Blade's hunting rifle trembled in his hands as he stared at the bone spikes and black plating covering the bull's body. Boss Lee simply collapsed to the ground. Little Black walked toward them, step by step. Blade snapped to, raised the rifle, and fired 3 shots. All 3 rounds hit the plating and skittered off in showers of sparks. Didn't even scratch the surface. Blade completely lost it. He threw down the rifle and ran. Little Black let Boss Lee go. The man had fed him for 2 months. He'd never been cruel. That counted for something. But Blade had blown up his cave. That didn't get to go unanswered. For hooves launched into a full sprint, closing the distance with terrifying speed. He caught up to Blade in seconds. Blade glanced back and nearly died of fright on the spot. His foot slipped, and he tumbled straight down the hillside, thrashing and wailing in the thorn bushes far below. Little Black stood at the ridge and watched him for a long moment. Then he turned away. The system chimed with quiet satisfaction. Host has successfully broken free from human pursuit for the first time. Achievement unlocked. Break free from shackles. Mutation stabilized. Form has officially evolved to Iron Armor Wild Bull. New mission unlocked. Go deep into the wilderness, devour stronger creatures, and reach 2,000 pounds. He lifted his gaze to the mountains stretching out before him. A spark of excitement ignited in his eyes. There was no going back to the human world. So he would carve out a life in the wild, one bite at a time. He turned and walked into the deep forest. Didn't look back once. Boss Lee's shouts faded behind him like an old life he was finally done with. The forest thickened around him as he pressed deeper, the canopy closing out the sky. A damp, rotting smell clung to the air. Animal droppings and tracks covered the ground in every direction. Somebody large and dangerous owned this territory. The brush ahead began to shake. Little Black stopped cold, every muscle pulled tight. A massive wild boar crashed out of the undergrowth, tusks a foot long, eyes blood red, easily for the 500 pounds. It spotted him and let out an enraged shriek, clawing at the dirt to charge. Little Black moved forward to meet it. The 2 beasts slammed together with a deep, bone-jarring impact. The boar's tusks scraped across his plating and left nothing but shallow lines. He drove his horn into its gut. The boar shrieked, blood pouring from the wound. He swung his head hard and sent it crashing onto its back, then brought a hoof down on its neck and ended it. Large wild boar defeated. 120 high energy points gained. He started eating immediately, warm, fresh meat, and that familiar burning heat surged through him again. Weight increased by 150 pounds, strength plus 15, constitution plus 12. Current weight 1,350 pounds, 650 pounds until evolution. Then rustling erupted from every direction at once. He looked up. Glowing green eyes 8, maybe 10 pairs, closing in from every side. A wolf pack. The alpha was enormous, dark gray fur, saliva dripping from its jaw, eyes full of cold murder. The others spread out in a practiced arc, forming a tightening circle. Little Black swallowed what was in his mouth. He let out a low growl and dropped into his fighting stance. The alpha howled. The pack attacked from all sides at once. He spun and kicked out with his back hooves, launching a wolf that had gone for his legs. Another clamped onto his neck and broke its own teeth against his plating. He caught it on his horn and flung it hard into the ground. But the pack fought like a machine. The moment one dropped, another filled the gap. His stamina was draining fast. His breathing grew ragged. Then the alpha came from the side, claws aimed straight for his eyes. No time to dodge. He turned his head and took the blow on his horn, but the alpha's claws raked down his cheek and opened it up. Blood ran down his face. He roared in pain and something inside him let go completely. Who cares if it's the whole pack? You want to fight. You've got one. He drove forward and rammed the alpha with the bone spikes along his back. The alpha twisted midair and barely got clear, but the wolf directly behind it was not so lucky. A spike punched straight through its body, dead instantly. The other wolves faltered, their assault visibly weakened. He charged the nearest one and crushed its skull under a single hoof. The alpha read the tide turning and sent one long howl into the air. The pack retreated. He stood panting in the open ground, soaked in blood, his and theirs mixed together. 3 wolves defeated, 180 high energy points gained. Host is injured. Recommend immediate consumption of flesh to restore stamina. He looked at the 2 wolf carcasses and the half-eaten boar and didn't hesitate for a second. He started eating. Warm meat hit his throat and the wounds began to knit shut before his eyes. Weight breaks 1,500 pounds. Strength breaks 100 points. Armor hardness increased. Bone spike length extended. Every trace of exhaustion lifted. Then more howls rose in the distance, multiplying fast. More than double the wolves that had just retreated. They had called for backup. He grabbed what remained of the boar carcass, clamped it in his jaws, and bolted deeper into the forest. The howls chased him like a shadow, relentless and growing louder. Through the gaps between the trees, he spotted at least a dozen wolves in pursuit. The alpha still leading them. That wolf had a long memory. The tree line suddenly ended. He burst out into open ground, a massive boulder field, jagged rocks scattered in every direction. A small stream cutting through the middle. No time to think. He charged in. The wolves followed. A dozen or more surging in from every side, every exit blocked. The alpha stood on a tall boulder above him, staring down with cold murder in his eyes. It threw its head back and howled. The pack attacked, and this time they had learned. No more one-on-one. They came in coordinated groups of 3 and 5. 3 wolves hit his left side at once. The moment he turned, 2 more clamped onto his back legs. He shook them loose, and the wolves in front tackled him to the ground. 4 or 5 piled on top, claws tearing furiously at his plating. Tough as it was, armor couldn't hold under this many wolves at once. Cracks began to form. He thrashed and drove a bone spike through the wolf, pinning his back. In the split second they pulled away, he flipped upright, charged the nearest wolf, and drove his horn through its chest. He flung it hard into the boulders, but the alpha leaped off its rock and launched straight for his throat. He sidestepped. Its claws raked 3 deep lines down his cheek anyway. He roared and spun, catching it with a back kick. The alpha tumbled through the air and landed perfectly on its feet. The pack swarmed back in. His stamina was crashing. A wolf bit into his foreleg. Another went for his eyes. He swung his head, horn gutting the one going for his eyes. Its insides hit the ground, but the wolf on his foreleg wouldn't let go. Its fangs had punched through the plating and into the muscle. He lost it completely. He heaved that foreleg up and drove it down with everything he had. The wolf's skull cracked on impact. It finally went slack. Wolf defeated. 60 high energy points gained. Host is seriously injured. Recommend immediate energy replenishment. He grabbed the nearest carcass and tore it. Gasping, warm meat and a sting in his wounds began to ease. The pack stared as he ate one of their own right in front of them. Fear and fury fought across their eyes. The alpha howled. The remaining wolves came in with nothing held back. They didn't care about their own lives anymore. 7 or 8 wolves hit him at once. Claws and fangs everywhere. The plating finally giving way. Large sections shattered. Blood welled through the cracks. His vision was going dark. His body was growing heavy. Was this really where it ended? Then the system fired. Host's life is in critical danger. Initiating emergency purge mode. Burning all internal energy reserves. Activating berserk state. His blood felt like it was boiling. A force erupted from somewhere deep inside him that he had never felt before. He let out a roar that shook the boulders and surged to his feet, launching every wolf off his back. His eyes went blood red. The bone spikes along his back began to grow, from 6 inches to over a foot, stretching fast. The cracks in his plating sealed shut and thickened as they healed, gleaming like polished metal. He crashed into the nearest wolf and flattened its skull with one hoof. Another leaped. He caught it on his horn and hurled it against the boulders. Dead on impact. He moved like a rampaging demon. Every wolf he reached went down. Then the alpha let out a long, piercing howl. Its body began to swell. Muscles surged beneath its fur. Its eyes deepened to a darker red. Its fangs grew twice as long. It was a full size bigger than before. This beast could go berserk too. The berserk alpha moved faster than anything he had faced. Before he could react, it was already in his face. Claws raking for his throat. He twisted his head, but 3 deep gashes opened across his neck. He backed off in pain, and it gave him no room to breathe. It launched right back and clamped its jaws onto his foreleg, fangs punching through the plating and into the bone. He thrashed desperately, but couldn't shake it loose. It hung on and wrenched with everything it had, trying to tear the limb clean off. He could feel the bone beginning to groan. He raised his other foreleg and drove it down on the alpha's skull. Once, twice, 3 times. It finally released and staggered back. He lowered his head and drove the bone spikes forward. The alpha tried to dodge, but the blows had slowed it just enough. A spike punched into its shoulder. He shoved forward with every last bit of strength he had. Crack! The alpha's shoulder blade was pierced. It let out an agonized shriek and fought to pull free. He kept driving, step by step, pushing it toward the canyon's edge. Its back legs were hanging over the drop. One more push and it was over. Then the alpha clamped its jaws onto his throat, going for mutual destruction. The fangs pierced his plating and dug into a vein. Warm blood sprayed out. His consciousness began to slip. I can't die here. He locked down every ounce of will he had left and drove forward. His horn caught the alpha and launched it into the air. It traced a wide arc and crashed into the boulder field deep in the canyon below. He stumbled back several steps, barely keeping himself from going over the edge. He sank to the ground, the gash on his neck still bleeding steadily. Mutant Alpha Wolf defeated. 500 high energy points gained. Skills acquired: Bloodthirst, Berserk, and Extreme Speed. Weight breaks to 1,000 pounds. Strength breaks 150 points. Agility breaks 80 points. Deep evolution initiated. He forced himself up and limped to the canyon's edge. The alpha's broken body lay far below, mangled from the fall, but still edible. He picked his way carefully down into the canyon and approached the carcass. Even in death, the beast was enormous, 600 or 700 pounds at least. He didn't waste a second. Warm flesh hit his gut, and that blazing heat surged through him again. The gash on his neck began to close. His shattered bone spikes started regrowing. He ate and ate until nearly nothing of the alpha remained. Consumption complete. Current weight 2,000 to 100 pounds. Strength 180. Constitution 150. Agility 90. Armor evolved to heavy armor. Defense increased by 200%. Bone spikes evolved to blade bone spikes. Piercing power increased by 300%. Power flooded back into every muscle. The pain and exhaustion of moments ago, gone. He raised his head. A dozen or more wolves stood at the canyon's rim, staring down at him, every single pair of eyes full of awe and fear. He let out one slow, low growl. Every single wolf dropped to its belly and trembled. From this day forward, this mountain forest was his. Over the following days, he hunted relentlessly. Every creature in the forest had learned his scent. They all gave way. He thought he'd finally have peace to keep evolving at his own pace. Then humans found him again. He was drinking from a stream when he heard rotor blades in the distance. He looked up. 3 helicopters, heading directly toward him. He turned and sprinted into the forest. They were faster. A massive metal net dropped from the sky, and he had no time to react. It caught him full on, and it was electrified. Violent current ripped through his entire body. He seized and convulsed, his legs buckling, and he hit the ground hard. The helicopters landed. 7 or 8 heavily armed men jumped out. The one leading them was a bald, powerfully built man with an electric prod and a tranquilizer gun on his hip. He looked like he had done this 100 times. His name was Captain Cole. He pulled out his radio. Dr. Soren, target is secured, awaiting instructions. A woman's excited voice crackled back immediately. Excellent. Bring it back to the facility. I want to study its mutation genes myself. Research facility. These people specialized in capturing mutant creatures. His heart sank through the ground. Tranquilizer darts hit him from every direction, punching through his hide. The sedative dragged at his consciousness like a fog, pulling him under. He fought back, but the metal net held him completely. Just before he went dark, the system chimed. Large quantity of tranquilizer agent detected in host. Initiating forced metabolism. Estimated full recovery time 3 hours. Recommend host feign unconsciousness and await escape opportunity. He stopped struggling immediately, closed his eyes, played dead. Captain Cole jabbed him with the electric prod, satisfied himself that the animal was out, and exhaled. Loaded into the transport cage, moved fast. Through barely open eyelids, he watched the mountains fall away below as the helicopter lifted off. An hour of flight later, he was moved into a massive underground complex surrounded by researchers in white lab coats. A woman in her 30s walked toward him, gold-rimmed glasses, eyes burning with barely contained excitement. This was Dr. Soren. Perfect, she breathed, circling his cage with a pen, moving rapidly across her clipboard. Absolutely perfect. The most complete mutation specimen I have ever seen. She ordered Captain Cole to transfer him to Lab 3, prepared for gene sampling. In the center of Lab 3 sat a massive metal operating table. His heart rate spiked. These people were going to dissect him. Dr. Soren approached the cage holding a syringe filled with green liquid. First, inject the gene stabilizer. We don't want it going berserk in the middle of a procedure. She reached for the cage door. His eyes snapped open. The system had broken down nearly all of the sedative. He could move. He roared and charged the cage door with his full weight, 2,200 pounds and a strength score of 180. Crack! The titanium alloy door buckled. Dr. Soren stumbled backward, screaming, "It's awake! Shock it, now!" Captain Cole charged with the electric prod. One kick sent him flying into the wall. He crumpled to the floor and didn't get up. The remaining team members opened fire with tranquilizer guns. Every dart bounced off the heavy armor like it had hit stone. He charged the nearest researcher and launched him with his horn. The lab erupted into chaos, white coats sprinting for every exit at once. Dr. Soren ducked behind a machine and slammed the red emergency button on the wall. Alarm screamed. Lab doors clanged shut. Dozens of high-voltage electric nets dropped from the ceiling and caged him in the center. The current hit, violent shocks tearing through his body. He seized and writhed, but he didn't go down. Dr. Soren peered at him through the machinery. Something dangerous ignited in her eyes. Remarkable. Its resistance to electrical current far exceeds all projections. She moved to a cabinet and drew out several syringes filled with blue liquid. High-concentration gene enhancement agents. Enough to put any living creature under, she said. She advanced on him, step by step. He was completely locked down by the nets, no room to move. Just as the needle was about to touch his skin, he activated Bloodthirst Berserk. His blood boiled. His eyes went blood red. Strength surged to 300 points. He roared and tore through the high-voltage nets. Sparks exploded in every direction. Every light in the lab flickered and strobed. Dr. Soren flinched. The syringe slipped from her hand and shattered on the tiles. Blue liquid spreading across the floor. He drove his horn into the nearest machine and smashed it to pieces. Equipment worth a fortune crumpled like foil in front of him, reduced to scrap in seconds. Then, in the corner, he spotted something. A massive refrigerated storage unit packed with vials of every color. Red, blue, green, purple. Dr. Soren's face went white. No, those are high-concentration gene agents. It cannot swallow those. Too late. He picked up a purple vial in his teeth, bit through the glass and gulped it down. The liquid hit his throat and a scorching heat shot straight up through his skull. Devoured high-concentration gene enhancement agent. 800 high-energy points gained. Constitution plus 50, strength plus 60, agility plus 40. That single vial hit harder than the alpha wolf had. He tore through the rest without hesitation. Red, blue, green, all of it down the hatch. Dr. Soren collapsed to her knees. It's over. All of it. Those agents are worth hundreds of millions. The facility is ruined. He kept eating. Consumption complete. Current weight to 1,500 pounds. Strength 280. Constitution to 120. Agility 100. Detecting energy overload in host. Entering metamorphosis sleep state. Before the chime faded, his eyelids grew impossibly heavy. His limbs stopped obeying him. He lurched toward the lab doors, but his legs had nothing left. He hit the floor, consciousness slipping away. Dr. Soren looked up and the light returned to her eyes. Now, while it's under, inject sedatives and lock it down. Captain Cole peeled himself off the floor, one hand pressed to his ribs, and limped forward. The team grabbed tranquilizer guns and opened fire. Every dart hit his body and couldn't break through. His heavy armor, supercharged by the gene agents, had grown even harder than before, gleaming with a cold metallic sheen. A massive transport truck rolled into the lab, carrying a custom-built titanium alloy cell with high-voltage shock units lining every wall. The team heaved him inside and locked all four legs with heavy-duty restraints. Dr. Soren ran a hand along the armor, her eyes burning. Extraordinary. This plating has already surpassed every known metal in hardness. If we can decode its genetic blueprint, it will push human technology forward by decades. She turned to Captain Cole. "Take it to the special lab on sub-level 3. We have the most advanced dissection equipment down there." The truck rolled forward, carrying him deeper underground, darker, colder. The air thick with sterile disinfectant. But inside that still body, something was very much awake. He could feel the change happening, bones rearranging, muscles multiplying, armor evolving. Metamorphosis progress 10%, 30%, 50%. Estimated 3 hours to complete final evolution, evolving to Abyss Devil Bull. Upon completion, host will attain destruction class power. The truck stopped. He was wheeled into the largest lab he had seen yet, 10 times the size of the first. In the center sat a metal operating table covered with electric saws, surgical blades, and sampling probes. Dr. Soren walked in with a full team behind her, a hungry smile spreading across her face. "Begin dissection prep." Captain Cole looked uneasy. "Dr. Soren, what if it wakes up?" She smiled without concern. "The agents in its system will keep it under for 3 full days. And this cell is built from the most durable titanium alloy we produce. A tank couldn't break through it." She rapped her knuckles on the bars. "Even if it did wake up, we're on sub-level 3. 30 fully armed security personnel surrounding this room. There is no way out." What she didn't know was this. His mind had never gone dark. The system was accelerating his metamorphosis. 2 more hours and the evolution would be complete. And when that happened, no titanium alloy cage in the world was going to hold him. He lay in the cell with his eyes closed, faking unconsciousness. The counter climbed in his mind. 70%, 80%. Every bone in his body was restructuring, muscle density climbing steadily higher. Dr. Soren stood at the cage with a tablet, scanning him carefully. "Strange. Its body temperature is rising, heart rate accelerating. This doesn't look like a normal unconscious state." She frowned and turned to Captain Cole. "Administer another round of sedatives." Captain Cole nodded and picked up a massive syringe. Just as he moved to unlock the cage, the system chimed. "Metamorphosis progress 100%. Evolution complete. Current form, Abyss Devil Bull. Weight 3,000 pounds. Strength 400. Constitution 350. Agility 100. New skills unlocked. Devastation charge. Hailstorm stomp. Terror roar." His eyes snapped open, blazing with crimson light. Captain Cole's hand jerked in terror. The syringe clattered to the floor. He let out a furious roar, and the sound wave hit the room like a physical force. The entire lab shook. The floor vibrated. Dust fell from the ceiling. Terror roar activated. All living creatures within range are plunged into fear. Dr. Soren and every researcher crumpled to the floor, wide-eyed and trembling. Captain Cole was a trained professional, but even he went chalk white, his legs buckling beneath him. He surged to his feet. The reinforced shackles snapped like paper. He slammed his body forward, and the titanium cage screamed with the sound of twisting metal. Crack after crack, the iron bars warped and split. Dr. Soren watched in disbelief as reality fell apart around her. "Impossible. That's titanium. How can it just break?" He slammed into it again. The cage exploded apart, shards flying in every direction. He stepped out of the wreckage. His body had grown a full size larger. His heavy armor had turned deep black, gleaming with a dark, sinister sheen. The bone spikes along his spine had become razor-sharp blades, each 2 feet long, terrifyingly keen. His horns had grown thicker and more powerful, their tips glinting with a cold light as if they could pierce through anything. Captain Cole pulled out his radio with a trembling hand. "All security personnel, report to the lab on sub-level 3 immediately. Target is out of control." The lab door burst open before the words even faded. 30 fully armed guards poured in carrying assault rifles and rocket launchers. Their commander, a scarred, middle-aged man called Scarface, took one look at him and shock flickered across his eyes. He recovered fast. "All units, open fire at will. Take the target down." A storm of bullets rained down on him. They hit his heavy armor and did nothing but spark. He activated devastation charge and barreled forward like a runaway tank. Several guards were launched into the air, slamming into walls before they hit the floor. "Rocket launchers, now," Scarface barked. The rockets screamed toward him, trailing fire. Boom! The massive blast swallowed him whole. Dr. Soren watched through the smoke, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Is it dead?" He walked out of the flames without a scratch. Scarface finally panicked. "Fall back, everyone fall back." But it was already too late. He activated Hailstorm Stomp, rearing up and slamming his front hooves into the ground. With a thunderous boom, the entire lab convulsed, cracks tearing across the floor. The shockwave blasted outward, and over a dozen guards lost their footing at once. Within minutes, more than half of the 30 guards were down. The survivors dropped their weapons and ran. Even Scarface abandoned his men and sprinted for the exit. He dashed forward and blocked the door. Scarface stared at him and squeezed his eyes shut in despair. A toss of his horn sent Scarface into the wall. The man was unconscious before he slid to the floor. The lab fell silent. Only Dr. Soren and a handful of researchers remained, huddled on the floor and shaking. He walked toward her, step by step, murder in his eyes. This woman had wanted to dissect him. She had nearly cost him his life. Dr. Soren stared up at him, tears running down her face. "Please, spare me. I'll never do it again." He held her gaze for a long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the back of the lab. Killing her would be too easy. The real punishment was letting her live to watch everything she built turn to ash. He went on a rampage through the lab, every piece of equipment smashed, every precious sample ground to pulp under his hooves. Then he spotted something in the corner, a massive glass enclosure holding mutant creatures, snakes, rats, and one enormous mutant black bear. They saw him, their eyes filled with fear and desperate longing. He kicked the enclosure apart with one hoof. The mutant creatures burst free and scattered, but the mutant black bear didn't run. Instead, it lowered its head in submission. He looked at it. Smart animal. It lay flat on the ground, eyes full of reverence, at least 2,000 pounds of coiled muscle, and it knew exactly who was in charge. He gave a low growl. The black bear rose and fell in behind him. If it wanted to serve, he'd keep it. He pressed deeper through the lab, smashing through door after door, the black bear keeping pace behind him. Finally, he reached the innermost room. The sign on the door read, "Core Energy Vault, authorized personnel only." He kicked it open. The room was filled wall to wall with massive cultivation tanks, each one packed with energy crystals of every color, pulsing with an intensity that dwarfed anything he had absorbed before. High-purity energy source detected. Host is advised to consume immediately. Consumption will break the current form's limit and trigger evolution to a higher tier. He charged in and rammed the first tank with his horns. Blue crystals spilled out. He swallowed them whole. They dissolved the instant they hit his tongue, and a monstrous surge of energy erupted through every cell in his body. High-purity energy crystal consumed. 2,000 high energy points gained. Strength plus 80. Vitality plus 100. Agility plus 60. He went wild, smashing tank after tank. Red, green, purple, gold. He devoured every last one. Current body weight 7,000 pounds. Strength 580. Vitality 550. Agility 320. Energy overload detected. Secondary evolution commencing. His heavy armor began to fracture, new plating pushing up from beneath, deeper in color, harder than before. The bone spikes kept growing, from 2 feet to 3, each one blazing with deep crimson light. His horns shot out to 5 feet, as thick as a man's thigh, their tips razor-sharp beyond belief. Then the facility's alarms exploded to life. Dr. Soren's voice crackled over the intercom, raw and frenzied. "Initiate self-destruct. If we can't contain it, we go down together." The entire facility began to shake. Red warning lights strobed across every wall. 10 minutes until this place was rubble. He spun around and bolted for the exit, but Scarface was already there. Back on his feet, bandages wrapped head to toe. Heavy machine guns and flamethrowers lined up behind him. Scarface's eyes were cold with resolve. Dr. Soren's orders, hold you here at all costs, even if it kills us. Every man opened fire at once. Bullets poured down like a monsoon. Walls of fire filled the corridor. He roared and activated Terror Roar, but this time the guards had come prepared. Custom earplugs, the fear effect barely landed. There was nothing left but to push through, straight into the bullets and the flames. The sheer impact force of the round slowed his legs. The fire scorched his hide. Not enough to kill, but enough to hurt badly. He activated Devastation Charge and plowed through the crowd like a heavy tank. But Scarface didn't budge. He dropped his machine gun and pulled out a remote control. "Die," he said, and pressed the button. Dozens of massive iron cages dropped from the ceiling, caging him inside and electrifying instantly. Violent current tore through his entire body, but his vitality was 550 now. A simple shock couldn't stop him. He roared and pushed outward, forcing the cage apart with sheer strength alone. Scarface watched with despair emptying his face. Monster, you're a monster. He closed the gap in an instant and kicked the remote out of Scarface's hand. Then he turned and headed for the exit. 5 minutes left. He burst out of the lab with the black bear at his side and tore through the corridors at full speed. The facility was a maze, forks and dead ends everywhere. He battered through door after door until he spotted an elevator to the surface. Dead, stairs only. He charged into the stairwell and scrambled upward on all fours, the black bear huffing right behind him. 3 minutes. He burst onto the ground floor and found the exit sealed behind a massive titanium door. Devastation charge. A thunderous boom. He punched a gaping hole clean through it. Open wilderness, trees stretching in every direction. 1 minute left. He ran with everything he had, the black bear sprinting alongside him. 30 seconds. 20. 10. Boom. A world-shattering explosion tore the entire facility to rubble. The shockwave rolled out like a tsunami and hurled him into the air. He slammed hard into the ground. The black bear was blasted into a tree and went unconscious. Where the facility had stood was now a sea of fire, thick black smoke blotting out the sky. He gasped for breath, battered all over, but his eyes burned with fierce excitement. He had survived, and he was stronger than ever. Successfully escaped the research facility, achievement unlocked, last stand. Current body weight 7,000 pounds, strength 580, vitality 550, agility 320, abyss demon bull peak state reached. He dragged the unconscious black bear into the dense forest and pressed on as his wounds slowly closed. Half an hour later, the black bear finally came around. It looked up at him with eyes full of gratitude. He gave a low growl, signaling it to keep up, and they moved on together. The system chimed again. Large concentration of high-energy creatures detected 3 kilometers ahead. His eyes lit up immediately. He pressed forward through the wilderness, the smell of blood growing thicker with every step. Finally, he reached an open clearing, and what he saw stopped him cold. The ground was littered with carcasses, deer, wild boar, wolves, even a few bears. And standing in the middle of the carnage were 7 or 8 enormous mutant creatures. Leading them was a mutant tiger, 3 times the size of a normal one. Every muscle coiled and ready, its eyes glowing green. Flanking it were 2 mutant leopards, 1 mutant boar, and a pack of mutant wolves. The mutant tiger spotted him, wariness flickered in its eyes. It let out a low growl, and the others fanned out instantly, forming a circle around him. He flicked his tail, not even slightly afraid. The battle was short and overwhelming. The tiger struck first, blindingly fast, lunging for his throat. He sidestepped and drove his horns into its belly. A gash opened along its ribs. The 2 leopards lunged from both sides. One drove straight onto his bone spikes and died instantly. The mutant boar charged from behind, and he drove a back hoof into its skull. Crunch. It dropped and didn't move. 2 mutant creatures down in seconds. Rage ignited in the tiger's eyes, and it went berserk, swelling a full size larger. Speed and strength rocketing upward. Even berserk, it wasn't enough. He activated Bloodthirst Frenzy, strength exploding to 800, then launched Devastation Charge. The tiger tried to dodge and realized he was faster. He slammed into it with full force. The tiger flew backward and snapped a tree trunk clean in half on impact. He drove his horns deep into its chest. The tiger convulsed once and went still forever. Consumption complete. Current body weight 8,400 pounds. Strength 650, vitality 600, agility 300. Host has reached the Abyss Demon Bull's limit. Further evolution is blocked. Consume a legendary creature to break the racial ceiling. A legendary creature. The system offered no further explanation, only an image. A deeper wilderness, ancient trees towering through mist. And somewhere in that mist, massive figures radiating a terrifying, crushing pressure. He stared at that image, a spark of excitement rising in his eyes. The real challenge had only just begun. Then rotor blades in the distance, 3 armed helicopters, the research facility's logo on their fuselages. Dr. Soren had survived and called for backup. Her voice crackled over the helicopter speakers, unhinged and screaming. "You beast! You destroyed my facility. You killed my people. Today you pay for all of it." Many guns opened up, turning the ground around him into a storm of dust. He fought back, lifting boulders weighing several tons, hurling them like cannonballs at the incoming helicopters. The first helicopter detonated midair in a fireball, Wreckage rained down. The other pulled back and fired missiles, 8 in total, 4 at a time. He activated overdrive and threw himself clear of the blast zones, then signaled the black bear to climb onto his back. He charged a towering tree, activated Hailstorm Stomp to tear its roots loose, and drove it toppling into a second helicopter. It crashed into the ground and exploded, a column of fire shooting skyward. Dr. Soren's voice cracked over the speakers. Pull back now. You can't kill this thing. The last helicopter turned to flee. The black bear launched off his back, grabbed a branch midair, swung off it, and landed on the helicopter's landing skid. Over 2,000 pounds on the skid, the helicopter lurched immediately, fighting for balance. The bear clawed its way to the cockpit window and shattered it with one paw. The pilot let go of the controls. The helicopter went into free fall and crashed in a tower of fire. He walked over and nudged the black bear with his nose, a compliment. Not the strongest, but clever. 3 helicopters destroyed, Dr. Soren and Scarface gone, buried somewhere in the wreckage and the smoke. He stood at the edge of the battlefield and gazed at the mountain ranges in the distance. Shrouded in mist, radiant in a faint but crushing pressure he could already feel from here. Human weapons could no longer touch him. The chains were gone. The farm was gone. The cages and the needles and the dissection tables were gone. He turned toward those distant peaks and walked, the black bear falling in beside him. The wilderness opening up ahead. From a helpless farm animal to the sovereign of every wild place, all in less than half a year. This land was his now, and the horizon ahead held something even greater, so he walked toward it without hesitation. And he did not look back.